Hey, and welcome to another edition of The Brand Called You. So you all know that most podcasts are very, very specific. They have very specific themes, but that's not me. I just talk to anybody I find fascinating, whose work I find fascinating. So for those of you who are following, last week we spoke to a professor of psychology at Harvard, and the week before, a Christian theologian whose specialty is the Jewish roots of Christianity, but not this week. This week, we're talking socks. Socks. And my guest today is David Fisher, who is one of the principals of a company called HIP, which secretly stands for hypnotic. And David is in the world of socks. Not just any kind of socks, though. The kind of socks that you find at Target or Walmart that are licensed, and they say things like Sleeping Beauty or Hannah Montana. We'll get to that. But I have never, ever understood how that world works. All I know, and welcome, David.
Thank you.
All I know is the effect of this world, because recently some Dutch friends were visiting with me, and we were at a restaurant, a fancy restaurant in New York, and they suddenly both pulled up their pants to show me the I Love New York socks that I bought them 7 years ago that they still cherish. Now, would you say that is that the kind of socks that you're in the business of making?
Yeah, I mean, we do a little of that. That's called private label, where you wouldn't know it's our name or anything. We just make different designs like I Love New York or smiley faces or emojis that we sell to stores. The major part of our business is the license business. Like I Love New York, everyone can write I Love New York, but the license business using Superman or Batman, that's something that not everyone can do. You have to have the rights to those brands.
Okay, so when you see the heart, I Heart New York, that's not, somebody doesn't own that?
So there is I Heart New York official that you can license that. But there's different ways around something like I Love New York. You could write I Love New York without a heart or with a heart upside down. So there's different ways around that. You can't do an upside down Mickey Mouse. Like Mickey Mouse is Mickey Mouse. So a license is a license. Something like I Love New York, we have socks that say I Love New York, but we don't license that official I Love New York logo. And a lot of people don't.
Let me go back a minute, because I'm fascinated, because I don't know anything about this world. So to have a license, you don't actually own you don't buy the product, right? Tell me what it means. Tell me what it means to own a license so if you wanted to sell Disney socks.
Correct.
What does it mean for you to have a license?
Exactly. A lot of people get confused by that. They say, oh, do you own the Disney license? You don't own anything. All you have with all these companies, whether it's Disney or Warner Brothers or DC Comics, is you sign into a contract. It's usually 1 to 5 year contract where you have the rights to sell it. You pay like an upfront fee just to make sure like that you're going to sell enough units, and then you pay a royalty. So we don't own Warner Brothers. We have the rights for 5 years to sell Superman socks. We have to guarantee them we sell a certain amount. So say we have to guarantee we sell them $5 million worth of socks. We owe them 10%, a 10% royalty on that 5 million. So no matter what, we owe them $500,000 in royalty fees for Superman socks. If we don't sell $5 million worth of Superman socks, say we only sell $3 million, we still owe them the 10% on the 5 million. So all you're doing is signing contracts that guarantees that you'll sell a certain amount. They don't want any Joe Schmo saying, hey, give me the license for this, and then they sell like $10,000 worth of socks. That doesn't make any money for them.
Well, I want to go back and do this chronologically, because you're still really young, and already your company has 20 employees and you do like 40 million a year in business. And I'm fascinated by this. So from what I understand, you started at a bar with a bunch of college guys unhappy with the hats that they were selling?
Exactly. So the way it started is in a bar, everyone was wearing baseball hats at the time. This is like 25 years ago now. And they realized all the hats were like Yankees, Mets, sports related, Lakers, baseball, football, tennis, hockey, soccer. And there weren't any cool hats that were just like nicer than just a baseball hat. So we thought, why not make nicer hats that people would want to buy in stores. And at the time, no one was doing it. It was a company called Stussy that was doing it a long time ago, but no one else was doing it. All the hats were just sports related. So we came up with a line of just fun hats that weren't nothing to do with sports. One said blah, blah, blah on it. One said it's all good. One had a happy smiley face on it. And we took those door to door to stores and said, hey, can you carry this hat that says blah, blah, blah? Can you carry this hat that says it's all good on it? Stores carried it. People went in the store and they bought it. They saw a hat that said it's all good and they bought it. And that's how we started the business, really.
Were you surprised at how well they did initially?
It took off really quickly, really well. Yeah, because like I said, at the time, there was not one person doing a hat other than sports. We were the first people to do that. And from there, it just grew and grew. And then people started calling us to make their hats. So we started getting a lot of like companies and bars and restaurants saying, hey, your hats are so cool looking. Could you make our hat, with our bar name on it, with our company name on it? And that's how we got into like the private label headwear business for companies and bars and restaurants.
And then you suddenly had a paradigm shift and you got into licensing. Is that correct?
Correct. So we realized you could only grow so much making a hat for a bar or for a company, or even like a generic hat that says it's all good on it.
Let me stop you right there. When you say we can only make so much, but I mean, what do you mean? Because wasn't that a lot already?
It was a lot already, but we were with the idea to grow. If we were doing $5 million worth of baseball hats with bars and restaurants and companies, our vision was to grow it to 50 million. And we couldn't do that selling just generic hats that had no meaning to like people. So we had the idea, like, people love movies and TV shows. Why don't we make a hat that says Jerry Seinfeld on it, or a hat that says Friends? So we started looking into the licensing world. It's funny, this right here, this is Seinfeld. Well, like, everyone loves Seinfeld. Let's make a hat that says Seinfeld on it. But we realized you need the rights to do that. So we started going out to companies saying, hey, can we get the license, the rights to sell your brand, movies, TV shows, things like that. And then we got our first one, and that led to others.
So now you're in socks. What happened to hats?
So we got the license for a couple of brands. One is this Hannah Montana, this Miley Cyrus. It was huge. We started selling Hannah Montana and Miley Cyrus hats. And we're like, wait a second. A lot of like girls and young women, they're not wearing hats, but everyone's wearing a sock. If you walk around outside, everyone in the world right now, from India to New York to Asia to everywhere, is wearing socks. Not everyone is wearing hats. So we're like, why not sell something that more people wear and buy? So we said, let's get into the sock world. We already had the license for Hannah Montana. So we said, hey, we're already doing hats. Can we also do socks? So we got into socks, and we ended up bringing on someone who was already in the sock world. He was with another company selling millions of socks. So like, hey, we'll pay you more. We'll give you a better working environment, whatever it may be, and come sell socks for us. So we got a big license. We hired a big guy who was in the business. We found a factory in China, and we started making socks. So for a while, for 10 years, we were doing hats and socks. And socks became so big that we stopped doing hats. Now we're just doing socks.
I mean, I love the fact that you had this big, big vision. You weren't just happy to be a small mom and pop retail hat shop.
Yeah, exactly. And for a while, it took time to get the profitability up, because we were making large profits on the $5 million worth of hats. And then we were doing socks. We were doing 10 million, but still making the same profit as the 5 million, because socks is it's a more technical business. Hats, you make a hat for $2, you sell it for $4, and it's one size, and it's easier. The sock business is just a tougher business. So it took time, but now the volume's so big, we're making more money.
Well, can you go back a minute? I don't, to me, a sock just seems very simple. It's a seam going down the middle of a piece of fabric? Like, why is it more technically complicated?
Well, it's more technically complicated to make a sock. The machines are more technical. You can see like the not the embroidery, but the knitting. It's harder to make this. The labeling's harder. It's smaller, and also these socks. This costs us 25 cents to make. So if you want to do $40 million in sales, you got to sell a lot of socks. We're selling 400 million pairs of these little things. So it's a lot of boxes, a lot of manufacturing, a lot of containers coming over. Where a hat you're making for $3, selling it for $6. It's cleaner, it's easier, it's one size. Here, there's many sizes in socks. So it's a bigger business trying to make a lot of money in socks.
Well, I mean, I have to ask you the obvious question is, since so much of your supply chain was originated in China, how did the pandemic affect your sales and business?
Yeah, the supply chain was a problem for 2 years. A lot of our socks were stuck on the water for 5 months. We did get cancellations. JCPenney canceled over $1 million worth of orders. Just because once you miss Christmas or miss back to school, they don't need it. It's not their fault, but they just don't need them anymore. We ended up being okay because a lot of companies stopped producing. They said, hey, we're not going to make you all these socks because we don't know if we can bring them into the US. We said, we're just going to go for it. And we ended up making all the socks for all the customers. We lost some, but the ones that we kept turned out to be huge because a lot of companies lost business because like they didn't provide. Once the stores opened, they had nothing to give them. We had all these socks that were sitting on the water. So we were more prepared than a lot of other sock companies in the sense that once the boat, supply chain got better, we were more prepared to ship all the stores as soon as they opened. So in a sense, it ended up helping us because, we were better than the competition.
Are you having to think about things like sustainable materials or child labor laws or any of these issues that are now really front and center in so many consumers' minds? Is this something that you've had to really like stay up to date with, be cognizant of, and shift as a result of?
Yes. Every one of our big licensors, Disney to Warner Brothers to DC Comics, they all go into our factories and audit them and make sure that all that stuff is up to board. So all the child labor laws, of course, and all the sustainability stuff, like everything's up to.
Were you surprised yourself by what they found, or were you knew right up front?
No, because for the most part, we're not trying to like nickel and dime, and we've always used higher quality factories. First of all, knowing that they're going to get audited, and if you use these factories that are shady, it doesn't work. The quality's terrible, the shipping's terrible. It's a big business, and when you ship in 300 million pairs of socks, you can't screw around with like factories that aren't like top of the line.
Did you have your experience with trying to nickel and dime it and getting burned?
Yeah, we've had experiences where the factories weren't everything we thought they would be, or they've had problems. COVID caused big problems. They lost a lot of employees, a lot of closures. I mean, doing this 30 years, there's been issues with factories, but nothing like that's anyone's fault. It's just the life of doing big business.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you something. I mean, obviously what I love about your company is you pivot. Hats are okay, but we want more socks, but we have to iron it up. Which one of you guys, or is it you, who stays on top of thinking, constantly improvising and adapting and thinking about growing the business and changing the business? Is that something that's constantly on your minds?
Yeah, it's constantly on the minds of everyone. And there's one guy, the president and owner, Howard Levy, who kind of oversees everything. And, over the years, keep in mind, we've tried other things. Socks is what worked, but we've tried watches, like Hypnotic and licensed watches. We've tried bags, like licensed bags, like backpacks, like for Champion and sports brands. We've tried T-shirts. We've tried a bunch of stuff. I'm forgetting everything. But yeah, so
which was the biggest clinker?
oh man, watches, clinker, even bags. We did a big business, but we realized it was very hard to make money in bags because they're so big that the storage costs to carry a bag, like this costs not a lot to store, it's so little, but a bag is this. So to ship it, the boxes are huge, and to store them in the warehouse in LA, it's huge storage costs. So, we did big business, but we couldn't make money on it. So,
This is stuff that we would never know. The rest of us would never know. But it's super fascinating also that you have to adhere to trends, right? Like you told me hats were sort of stopped being as trendy as they once were as well, right?
That exactly trends. And, right now we focus on the trends of pop culture, like TV shows and movies and brands, even like something like Friends and Seinfeld. I mean, those shows were made 40 years, 35 years ago, whatever it is. But they're so popular right now. Like Friends is super popular, and we have the license to Friends, and we're selling millions of Friends socks that say Friends on it, and Central Perk and Seinfeld and all these, even The Simpsons is so old, but we're making millions of Simpsons socks. But then this new show, Ted Lasso, it's huge. So that's a new license. And now we're making Ted Lasso socks. So we're doing like old school Seinfeld, to the new school Ted Lasso, like in the same box. I mean, we're mixing, so.
Do you have to be cognizant of when a network decides to start showing reruns of an old show so that you can sort of jump on the bandwagon?
100%. We try to time it with like when the new seasons come out, and sorry, did I lose you? Oh, when the new seasons come out and when new old shows resurface, for sure. I mean, I don't know if I have stuff here, but this is Nickelodeon, South Park. When the movie comes, they might make another movie, so we time it around, that movie. Harry Potter.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt. Once you get the license, you get to have it like it's a limited amount. Like, in other words, if you get a license 40 years ago for 10 years ago for something, do you have to renew that years later, or do you try to maintain it throughout? Or only when you're producing, or do you try to maintain it anyway?
Usually most licenses are by a yearly contract. So it's like a 2-year contract, 3-year contract, 4-year contract. You have it for those 3. And then at the end of the 3 years, when the contract is up, you have a meeting. Hey, do you want to renew? Do you like us? Do we like you? It's like a mutual. Sometimes they say, hey, you're not doing a good job. We don't want you anymore. And sometimes we say, hey, your show sucks. We're not selling a lot of socks. We don't want you anymore. So it's a mutual. But after the contract's up in 2 years, you decide if you want to renew or not.
What's to stop though my next door neighbor from saying, I want that license? Like, do you have an exclusive or?
Yeah. So the exclusivity, for the big ones like a Disney or Warner Brothers or DC Comics, Harry Potter, you don't have an exclusive. There's usually like 2 or 3 guys that are doing it. So they'll give, Seinfeld to 2 people. They'll give Harry Potter to 3 people if it's so big, because they don't want to put all their eggs in one basket. What if they give it to us and we suck and we go out of business? Then they're screwed. They got no Harry Potter stocks out there. So big ones, it's not exclusive. It's like 2 or 3 or 4 vendors, probably 2 or 3. But you can get small ones. You can find a niche, like maybe like a Ted Lasso. If we get on it early, hey, can you give us Ted Lasso, just us, for 2 years? So you negotiate that. Having exclusive is good if it becomes really popular, because the store's got to go to you.
And do you also try to, like, if you're selling to a Target, does Target commit to only provide, doing business with you or one of your competitors as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. So someone like Target, which is our biggest account, something like a huge property like a DC Comics or something, they will buy from 2 different vendors sometimes. And they basically base it off of price, like, hey, your sock's more expensive than his socks, or design, like, are you doing a nicer, dinosaur than the other guy? And then it's relationships, like, who does the buyer of Target have what kind of relationship you have with them, decides which way he goes. They have a lot of power, these Walmart and Target, they decide where they spend all their money. So.
But you're not actually, I mean, you say design, but don't you have to adhere to the artwork that they provide you with?
Another great point. So they send a style guide, something like a Warner Brothers or Disney, or the style guides are huge, well, they used to be on paper, but online is thousands and thousands of pages of what you're allowed to do. So they say, here's Mickey Mouse and here's what you're allowed to do to Mickey Mouse by color or shape or design. So you have flexibility with a lot of things. But yeah, you can't change Mickey Mouse's nose or Spider-Man's mouth, obviously. So there's a lot of restrictions. And for every design, as soon as we design it in the showroom, we send it to the licensor like Disney or Warner Brothers, and they have to approve it. So before you make this Harry Potter socks, it goes to Harry Potter. There are people say, okay, that looks good, and you can make that sock. So it's not like they're approving everything.
What was the most shocking rejection you ever got? Like, did anybody say that looks racist or that's offensive, or like, did you get any shocking politically correct rejection?
It's a good point. Nothing shocking. No, most of our direction is you can't have a yellow nose on Mickey Mouse. Like nothing, because we're doing all comic book stuff. We know better than to do anything, in that realm. So no.
But I mean, so tell me, you've told me about your huge success like Hannah Montana. Which was your biggest clinker, the biggest one that failed?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, like the licenses you win on, you do really well. Like, we're doing really well with Harry Potter, making $1 million. But sometimes you take a TV show or a movie or something that didn't do well in the box office that you thought would, and it doesn't do as well. I think one example was 50 Shades of Grey. What's the word? A sexy book.
Yeah.
Film.
I mean, naturally, you think that would do very well because it was hot and sexy. And so what happened?
It's in the hosiery. So we started making socks that were like more like thigh high with little like garter belt linings, with little 50 Shades of Grey labels. And it didn't translate. Women didn't want to, if they liked the book or movie, maybe they liked it secretly, but they didn't want to wear 50 Shades of Grey socks. So that's something like we thought it was such a popular book series and movie series, it would translate to socks, and it didn't. So we'll lose money on something like that because we still.
Yeah, but that brings up an interesting point, which you sort of have to be a bit of an amateur psychologist too, because you also have to analyze the interests of consumers in the sock realm, not just in the movie realm, right?
Of course, there's a lot of things we pass on because even though it's super popular, doesn't mean someone wants to wear a sock on it. The Kardashians are super popular TV show, but no one's wearing Kim Kardashian a sock with Kim's face on it. There's a lot of popular shows that don't or movies that don't translate to socks.
But how do you know that? Do you bring in like a market research person, or like do you do like a kind of qualitative research, or
absolutely no research, all experience and common sense. And you also base things on what other properties are selling. So if you go to the store and see a lot of Seinfeld t-shirts and hats and book bags and sneakers, then we're like, oh wow, people are buying stuff with this logo on it. Maybe it will work on socks. So, you won't go to the store and see, if you don't see it in the store in another property, then it won't work on socks.
That's fascinating. I mean, just shifting to another category, I noticed that on your website that you're very involved, your company, in charity and in charitable gifts. And could you just talk a little bit about how you're giving back? Because I was very interested.
Yeah, I'd love to. So one of the partners named Ron Weingart, his brother Scott Weingart was my best friend growing up. And he sadly passed away 9/11. Was working Cantor Fitzgerald. Oh. And he was with us at HIP for 8-9 years, and then 6 months before 9/11 decided he wanted to change and went to work at Cantor in the World Trade Center. So he passed away 9/11, sadly. And so we have a scholarship in his name, and we, part of the proceeds we try to donate to different camps, and we have a scholarship at University of Michigan where he went in his name. And just try to do the right thing with donations and of product and financial when we can, to things in his honor and his memory.
And what sort of are you dreaming up or conjuring up for the future? I mean, I know that you guys are always staying one step ahead of everything. So what are some of your ideas, whether are you changing into a different field besides socks? Are you expanding or are you going to sell the business and move to Hawaii?
No, I mean, like I said earlier, the big thing for us is finding the next big property. We want the next Hannah Montana. We want the next Seinfeld. We want the next Star Wars. So that's the biggest thing for us. And the other big thing is finding different ways to sell a sock. Like we said, this is our biggest thing right now, if you could see it, but it's 15 pairs of socks in this thing. We ship 5 million of these boxes, and the next month we'll ship 5 million of these boxes. And we do it it's called 15 Days of Socks. It's like a holiday item. So people buy them, put them on the Christmas tree, Hanukkah bush.
Who came up with that? Who came up with that idea?
The president of our sock division, one of the partners, he came up. It's based off an advent calendar that they do.
Yeah.
So it's based off that, and now it's become hugely popular. A lot of people have copied us on it. Like I said, this is like an ice cream container. We got little 3-pair packs and boxes. This is a different way to do it. So we're sticking with socks. We're just trying to find the next big license and different ways to pack.
Yeah, but I know that you have 10 of the major stores at least that are working with, but aside from physically being in stores, are you also selling on social media directly?
Another great question. No, our big 95% of our business is with 10 retailers: Target, Walmart, Kmart, Kohl's, Sears, JCPenney, Ross, Burlington, TJ Maxx. So that's our big business. We make everything. We design it here. We make everything in China, put it on a boat, ship it to our warehouse in LA. And from our LA warehouse, we ship it all right to Target, right to Walmart.
And you let them worry about the social media part of that sale.
Exactly. So we have a very small social media presence because we don't sell to individuals. We sell to one person at Target who buys $20 million of socks. So
surely you've thought about the idea of the vast reach you could have if you sold directly to individuals.
Yes, we have tried over the years. Another thing that we didn't do well is to sell to individuals. This little sock we sold to one person on Amazon. And it just was too much work for us. We'd make it for a quarter. We'd sell it for $1. The packaging and shipping costs more than this little sock. So we'd rather sell 1 million socks one time to one person than one sock to 1 million people. So that didn't work. We do sell to some people who are in the Amazon social media business, where we'll sell them 10,000 of these, and they'll on their own mark it up and put it on Amazon and Facebook, and they'll do that. So we do make some business from that world. We don't do it personally. We sell to people who do it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I mean, I guess my last question is, I know you don't use market researchers, but there is a changing demographic in America. I mean, when I think about the refugees even that are coming in, the different changing groups, whether it's economic, racial, social, how does that factor into your thinking about the future of America, and also climate change, by the way? I mean, how do all these changing environmental and social factors, how do you take them into consideration as you move into the future?
Yeah. Well, one thing we love about socks is they're sort of recession proof in the sense that they're very cheap. Like I said, we make this for a quarter, we sell it for 50 cents, someone buys it for $1. We're selling this 15 pairs of socks for like $10. So it's a cheap item where every economic person, everyone could afford it. The other thing is, again, everyone wears socks. You sort of need to in America, especially in the winter. Our sales are cyclical. When it's really hot out, like this summer, we don't sell as many socks because people are wearing flip-flops and things like that. So sure, climate change, if it stays hot longer during the year, we do less business. We want it to be cold in September because that's when people start really
I mean, how are you taking into account climate change in your business? Because it's happening.
there's nothing we can do about it except hope that it doesn't stay warm longer, throughout the US all year. But no, we're just aware of it, and we base our ordering and sales off of the seasonal changes. But again, nothing we could do about it except
go into sandals, maybe open toed.
Exactly. We had before another one that didn't work. So we do slippers, we do some sort of things like that. But also we try to do things that the same buyer could buy. You know what I'm saying? So the buyer who buys socks buys slippers, buys like little feet stuff. So they don't buy flip flops. So we try to do, but.
Well, and I should conclude this interview by saying that HIP stands for hypnotic. And I have to say, in a million years, I never would have imagined being hypnotized by your industry, but you really managed to captivate me. I'm super fascinated, genuinely.
Yeah,
I think a lot of people, thank you I will never look at another pair of socks again in the same way.
Yeah. No, thanks for having me. And listen, I've been doing it 25 years, so it doesn't sound exciting to me, but I'm happy to talk about it.
You think you'll last another 25 or you think?
Oh man, I don't know. Every year I say I'm tired of socks, but it's paid the bills, paid the rent, so sticking with it for now.
All right. Well, I can't wait to see what happens next. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
It was so much fun. Bye.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.